is Jenna and I have not done a book haul since February of 2019. I don't know how this happened. I swear I've done book hauls semi-regularly in the past, but I was thinking about videos that I could film and I sort of got to thinking, I was like, oh, you know what, I've bought quite a few books in the last month or so. Maybe I can do a book haul. And then I went back through I have like this notebook where I write down all of my books that I buy. And I always put a little line underneath when I've done a book haul so that I know what books I've hauled in a video and what books I haven't. And I was looking back through that and I'm like, no, I don't see a line, I don't see a line, I don't see, oh, there's a line. That can't be right. So I went back on my YouTube channel and yeah, February 2019 is the last time I have done a book haul for you guys. So this book haul has just a few books in it. There's approximately just under 60 that we're going to be going through today. Some of which I'm not including because I've actually already unhauled them, and some of them that I am including I am going to unhaul. So it's a whole thing. We're going to do this in I think I forgot a book already. We're going to do this in as best an order as we possibly can, and we are also going to attempt to give a short synopsis of each book, but we will see how we go. One thing I will not be doing is telling you when I bought these books because I honestly won't be able to remember, but this first one I do. This book I got right after I did that February book haul, and that is Vardasia by Lynette Noni. This is the final book in the Madoran Chronicles series. It came out 10 years ago. It feels like it didn't. It came out last year, don't stress, but it feels like it came out forever ago. This is the final book. I've obviously read it. It's fantastic. I'm a critique reader, so I have my name. You can't see that at all. My name is in the back of this book, and I believe it is also signed by Lynn, so that's a fun time. I really love this book. I'm not going to tell you what it's about because it is the last book in the series, but if you haven't already read the Madoran Chronicles, go read it. Next up we have an arc, and that is We Are Blood and Thunder by Cassia Lupo. I know absolutely nothing about this book. I actually think it's a standalone though, which is kind of exciting, but I don't know anything about it. I just know that I was sent it by the publisher, and you can tell it's an arc because half title to come. So, you know, all the fun. Next up we have Making Friends with Alice Dyson by Poppy Nuoso. This is a standalone contemporary novel, and this one follows the main character of Alice, who after a series of unfortunate events ends up finding herself entangled in the life of Teddy, a notorious bad boy who suddenly won't leave her alone. It's a great book, highly recommend. Next up we have a uni book, one of the only uni books I've kept, and this is how long ago it's been, guys. I've been out of uni for over a year now. Oh, I don't like that at all. This one is 450 from Paddington by Agatha Christie. This is just, I don't know how you can explain it. It's an Agatha Christie cozy novel, so highly recommend as well. This one's a lot of fun. I didn't guess the ending and I didn't guess the murderer, and I'm really mad about it. Next up we have another uni read, and that was Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. This is a gothic, romantic thriller, little bit of paranormal in there, like it's a whole thing, and this one follows a main character who she marries this man and is sort of not haunted as such, but always feels like she is second to the first wife, Rebecca, and it's a really good read. There's been multiple movie adaptations. There's a new one coming as well, which I'm really excited about because it stars Lily James as Rebecca. Keen for that one. My last ever uni read is The Catcher of the Rye by J.D. Salinger. This is a coming of age story. I think it's one of the first coming of age stories. I'm not going to explain too much about it because I feel like this is one of those classics that are kind of universal and everyone just kind of knows about it, but it was a good book. Didn't hate this one. Just kind of a big praise for a uni book. Next up is The Red Scrolls of Magic by Cassandra Clare and Wesley Chu. This is the first book in the Eldest Curses series. Sorry, I completely blanked there because I always call it the Malik book. This book follows Magnus and Alec, and it is set between City of Glass and City of Fallen Angels as they go on their trip around the world, but obviously something goes a little bit wrong and they end up having to look for the Red Scrolls of Magic. Next up we have The Secret Runners of New York by Matthew Riley. This is, I believe, his first foray into young adult fiction, and I don't exactly know what it's about. I think it has to do with a group of kids that have access to this tunnel that sort of sends them into the future, and they figure out that the future is like dying and then they have to try to save it, I think. Not entirely sure. Next up, I bought a series in its entirety, and that is the Summoner series by Tara Matharu. So we have The Novice, The Inquisition, The Battle Mage, and The Outcast. So these first three books are part of the series, and this is sort of the prequel companion novel. This book follows a boy named Fletcher. He is an orphan who discovers that he has the power to summon demons. This is a very rare power, and so he ends up going to this very fancy academy to learn how to control his powers. It's basically like Harry Potter meets Lord of the Rings meets Pokemon. So I was, you know, hella invested when I bought it, and it was so good. And I think I ended up buying this one and The Inquisition immediately. And then that was when I was in Melbourne last year, and then I came home from Melbourne and immediately bought books 3 and 4 because it was just such a good series. Next up is Viper by Bex Hogan. This is a pirate book. We follow Marianne, who is one day destined to become the Viper. The only problem is that the current Viper is standing in her way, who just happens to be her father, and he's a terrible, terrible person. So this sort of follows Marianne's journey to becoming the Viper as she sort of understands that her dad is not the nicest guy, and she also has to try to figure out how to save the islands that she loves from this ruthless king. So, you know, she's got a lot of responsibility on her shoulders. Next up we have Defy the Worlds by Claudia Gray. I believe this is the sequel to Defy the Stars. Yes, it's the sequel to Defy the Stars. I have not read Defy the Stars. I don't know what Defy the Stars is about, so I can't give you much on this one except for it's the sequel to Defy the Stars. And that it's a sci-fi, and there's possibly an AI robot in it. Next up is Ever the Hunter by Erin Summerall. This, I got nothing. I honestly think I picked it up because a friend was selling it really cheap for a hardcover, so I bought it because I'd heard Sasha from a Book Utopia talking about it, and it just sounded awesome. Apparently, 17-year-old Britta Flannery is very, very good at tracking criminals alongside her father, who happens to be this awesome bounty hunter, but then her father is murdered, and she is... well, she's got nothing. She's got absolutely nothing left to her name. She's caught poaching by the Royal Guard, and she's sort of given an ultimatum. She can either, you know, die, or she can go and hunt down and kill her father's killer, but it turns out her father's killer may have been his apprentice, who happened to be the only friend she's ever had, and it just kind of goes from there, from what I can tell from quickly skimming the blurb. Next up we have Nexus by Sasha Alsberg and Lindsay Cummings. This is the sequel and finale to Zenith, as it is only a duology. This follows Andromeda and her badass group of female pirates as they work through from the explosive events of Zenith and sort of try to figure out how to stop the evil person whose name escapes me. Nor. Her name is Nor. And it sort of goes from there. It's a sci-fi. It was a really fun read as well. I really enjoyed this one, which obviously shocked a lot of people because, you know, Netflix, Zenith, where did I get Netflix from? Obviously Zenith is like taboo in the booktube world, but I really enjoyed it. Then we have another arc, The M Word by Brian Monaghan. I know nothing about this one. Nothing at all. Is there a... yes. Okay, cool. So this one is about a young girl, Maggie, who talks to her best friend Moya every day. She tells her about all of the crap that she's been going through, the fact that her life kind of sucks, and Moya is just kind of, you know, always there for her. And then Moya's dead, so she's talking to a ghost, or she's maybe not talking to a ghost as such, maybe she's just like talking to a person or talking to a memory, but either way Moya is no longer alive, which does make for a very interesting concept, and like I should probably read that book at some point, but also limited edition book proof. Well, that's exciting. Makes me feel bad for not having read it sooner. I also have A Town Called Dust by Justin Woolley. This is one that I believe has been signed, and honestly I don't know if I picked this one up in the last 12 months or so. It could have been before that, but it was on my list, so we went with it. This is set in a post-apocalyptic Australia, and it's kind of like a zombie virus sort of story. It's not bad. It's not great, but it's not bad. A very precarious pile of books next to me, and it's making me nervous. Next up we have Again But Better by Christine Riccio. This is a contemporary novel. I think everyone on BookTube pretty much knows about it. It follows this girl named Shane. You know, she's getting all right grades in college and whatnot, but she's not doing college the way she wanted to, so she hops on a plane and goes over to London to do it again but better. However, if you read the book you'll know that is not what again but better means, and well, I was very disappointed reading this one. Next up we have The Vanishing Stare by Maureen Johnson. This is the sequel to Truly Devious, and it follows Stevie at the academy whose name escapes me right now as she deals with the fallout of that first book while also still trying to figure out who the murderer is. And okay, there is a riddle in the first book, and the riddle is The Vanishing Stare, and you never get an answer to it, so there better be an answer in this one. Whew, bugs me. Next up we have 5 Feet Apart by Rachel Lippincott with Mickey Daltrey and Tobias Iconis. This is a contemporary novel, and it follows I don't know if it's one person or 2 people with cystic fibrosis. I think both of them have got cystic fibrosis, both Stella and Will. I'm pretty sure they both have it. I'm not entirely sure, but either way, they fall in love, but they also have to stay 5 feet apart from each other, and it's a really nice, it's a cute contemporary, and it was actually a really nice little book. I really did enjoy it. I still haven't seen the movie though. I should probably get on that. Next up, we have Steel Tie by Natalie C. Parker. This is the sequel to Seafire, and it follows Caledonia Styx and her badass group of pirates as she deals with the fallout from the last book. In this one, when she starts off, she is alone for a various number of reasons, and she meets a whole new group of boys who are defected bullets, and she needs to learn to trust them in order to find her crew and to, you know, rid the seas of the real bad dude. Without spoiling things, that's the best I can do. But also read the Seafire trilogy because it's fantastic. Next up, we have Supernova by Cass Morgan. This is the sequel and finale to Light Years. This follows a group of kids up on this space academy, and it's... how do you explain this book? This one also obviously follows on from the events of the first book, and the events of the first book sort of have our characters all very much torn apart, and they have to learn to trust each other again as they work through trying to stop this war from ever taking place, and it's very good. Highly recommend. It's also kind of a romance set in space, but with adventure as well, so it's one that I would pretty much recommend. I'm losing all of my natural light, so we're gonna get through this as quickly as we can, but we have a lot of piles. Next up, we have Monuments by Will Kostakis. This is the first book in a duology, and it follows main character Connor, who all he wants is to get his ex-best friend back in his life when he accidentally sort of opens up this trapdoor and finds this monument, which is basically a god, and finds this girl who claims to be the keeper, or the, I don't know if it's the keeper, it's the something. She's got a name. She's saying that she's that, and it follows the two of them and Connor's new crush as the three of them sort of try to find all the monuments, rescue them, and stop the very bad thing from happening. Next up, we have Pet Sematary by Stephen King. This is the, you know, very famous Pet Sematary, which follows this new family as they move into this new home, and the cat of the family dies and it gets buried in this pet cemetery, which brings things back from the dead, and we sort of go from there. You can kind of see where the story is going. It's not as creepy as I thought it was going to be. I must admit, wasn't as scared as I thought I was going to be. Next up, we have Misery by Stephen King. This one, I don't know. I think this one is about a writer who kills off his main character, and then an obsessed fan who's like, hold on a second, what do you mean you killed off your main character? You need to fix that. And so she kidnaps him. I haven't read this one, but I'm pretty sure that sounds about right. Next up, we have Cell by Stephen King, and this one is kind of creepy because this one is where an event has propelled humanity into its second dark age, and that something is cell phones, because, you know, that's a thing. And I think this one follows a man who is traveling across the country to try to reach his son before his son turns on his phone, because that will cause him to get the virus, and it sounds cool. It also sounds realistic of something that could happen, so I don't love that, but I'm keen to see where this one goes. Next up, we have The Deathless Girls by Kieran Millwood Hargrove. This is a Brides of Dracula retelling. It's creepy, and it's not really a Brides of Dracula retelling if you read it, but it's billed as such, and this is actually one of the books that I have decided to unhaul. Next up, we have Frozen 2 Forest of Shadows by Camilla Benko. This is the bridge novel between Frozen and Frozen 2. You do not need to have read this book in order to understand everything that goes on in Frozen 2, but I must admit there were particular moments in the movie where I went, oh, I understand that because I read the book. So this one was a lot of fun, and it was so cute. Next up, we have Weapon by Lynette Noni. This is the sequel and finale to Whisper. This one follows Jane Doe as she comes to terms with who she is and comes to terms with what she has to do in order to save everyone that she loves. It was a very good finale, and I was shocked and not particularly impressed about the treatment of a particular character, but only because, well, you should read it and find out, and you won't have the same reaction as I did, but I liked a certain character and I feel betrayed. Next up, we have the special edition of Akane by Lynette Noni. This is the first book in the Madoran Chronicles, and it is the special limited edition. Akane follows a girl named Alexandra Jennings, who one day at her new school, she walks through a doorway and ends up in the mystical, magical world of Medora, where magic is actually just science and technology. It's a great book, great series, highly recommend, and this edition is gorgeous. Look at those beautiful gold pages. We have a beautiful owl, just hit myself in the face, a beautiful map with the end pages. Lynn signed it for me. In the back here, we've got also beautiful end pages with all of the amazing drawings that I think J. Maz Art did, I believe. So it's absolutely gorgeous. I know that somewhere in here we have a Don't know where it is. Oh yeah, we have a Q&A with Lynette. There is also a deleted scene from Raylia. It's such a fun time, and I should probably read those things at some point. My god, look at it. It's so gorgeous. Wow, we are really running out of light, but it's fine. We're gonna keep going. So next up, we have Ironheart by Jodie McAllister. We also have Misrule by Jodie McAllister. These are books 2 and 3 in the Valentine trilogy. So Valentine follows a girl named Pearl. She and 3 others in her little town were all born on the same day. They were born on Valentine's Day. And we find out in the first book that one of them is actually the Valentine. It is a fairy changeling, and the fairies have now come to claim what is theirs. And it's a great book. Well, the first book was amazing. I cannot wait to read the rest of the series, and it's so good. Jodie's amazing. Y'all should read this. I also think these books are signed. It sounds like the kind of thing that would happen, wouldn't it? These ones you've probably seen because I probably got them at a Supernova somewhere, and oh yeah, look, there we go. Signed. Signed. You can't really see it, but they're signed, I promise. Next up, we have The Wailing Woman by Maria Lewis. This is I don't want to say it's a spin-off of her Who's Afraid series, because I think they're actually all in the same series. I'm not entirely sure. Maria signed this one as well. It says, "Welcome back, my angel, never leave." So that's because I went to America and missed out on her book tours and whatnot, but I'm excited to read this one. The difference being, of course, is that this is an adult fantasy novel, and I'm not used to reading those. I like doing this though, it's fun. But this book follows a banshee, I believe, a teenage banshee living in Sydney. Well, she's banished from Ireland, so at least we know she's not there. I think she lives in Sydney though. Either way, it sounds awesome. Next up, we have The First There by Will Kostakis. This is a contemporary novel, and it is a story about this guy, or this kid, or this teenager, and his family. And his family has kind of a shake-up, and he explains it as life is split into 3/3, and this is him doing his first third of life. So it's kind of a cute book, but I felt like I was missing something while I read it. Next up, we have These Sidekicks by Will Kostakis. This is also a contemporary novel, and I believe this follows 3 characters who they all have the same best friend, and that best friend died, and the only thing these guys have in common was that person. And I think they try to sort of, I don't know, honor his memory by becoming friends or by talking about him together, something like that. All I know for sure is that they all had the same best friend and he died, but they didn't really know each other. Next up, we have a book that was actually gifted to me by someone at the YA Circle. We did a book swap for Christmas. It was really beautiful, so thank you to whoever gave me this book, and that was Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor. I have heard of Laini Taylor, and I've heard of the Daughter of Smoke and Bone trilogy, but I know nothing about it. Although according to this, it's Northern Lights and Pan's Labyrinth in one, so that sounds fun, but I honestly know nothing. Nothing at all. Next up, we have Star Wars Resistance Reborn by Rebecca Rowanhorse. I bought this book because it was one of the Journey to Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker books. I read it, I loved it, and Poe and Finn are together. You can fight me on it, but after what happened in this book and after what happened in the movie, they're so together. Next up, we have A Heart So Fierce and Broken by Bridget Kemmerer. This is the sequel to A Curse So Dark and Lonely, which was the Beauty and the Beast retelling. This book follows Grey and new character Leah Mara as they are trying to flee from Ren's kingdom for a variety of reasons, and it was a lot of fun, really good. I loved the new characters in this book, and I am going crazy trying to figure out what's going to happen in A Vow So Bold and Deadly. Next up, we have The Hand on the Wall by Maureen Johnson. This is what I thought was the final book in the Truly Devious trilogy, but apparently there is a 4th book coming, so that's a thing. But obviously this one follows on from whatever the events of The Vanishing Stair are, which follows on from the events of Truly Devious. All in all, like, oh, interesting. All in all, it sounds awesome. Hardcovers are expensive. Next up, we have Infinity Sun by Adam Silvera. This is a superhero novel. This is not a particularly well done superhero novel, and I am actually unhauling this one. Next up, we have Havenfall by Sarah Holland. This is a book about a girl who sort of lives in Havenfall. Well, she's visiting Havenfall for the summer. Her uncle falls ill, and let's just say my favorite character of this book was the uncle, who spent the entire book in a coma. So, you know, I'm unhauling this one. Next up, we have House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas. This is the first book in the Crescent City trilogy series? I actually don't know. This is her first adult novel, although, you know what? You could definitely argue that the Court of Thorns and Roses series, well, at least the 2nd and 3rd book, you could argue that they are way more adult than they are young adult, but I am keen to read this one. I don't know if I can commit to that big of a book, especially in adult fantasy. I don't know if I got that in me, guys. I also don't know anything about what that book is about. I literally just bought it because it's Sarah J. Maas and everyone was buying it, but I know nothing about it. Next up, we have have The Last Wish by Andrzej Sapkowski. This is the prequel novel full of short stories to the Witcher series, and it follows Geralt as he sort of goes off on his little journeys, and it's just kind of introducing you to the world of The Witcher and what a Witcher actually is. It was really cute though when I finally finished it, which I'm very proud of. Next up we have Alice by Christina Henry. This book is signed. I think I got it at a Supernova, so honestly you've probably seen it hold on this channel at some point, but not in a book haul. And this book is a very dark Alice in Wonderland retelling, like really, really dark, lots of murder, lots of sexual things, and it was actually a really good novel and I really enjoyed it. Next up we have Lost Boy by Christina Henry. This one I also reckon I got at the same time as Supernova. I didn't get this one signed apparently. Oh wait, yes I did, haha, right there. And this one I think is actually told from the point of view of Captain Hook, I think, and it follows the story. It's a Peter Pan retelling, but Peter Pan is the villain, which if you ask me, he's the villain anyway, but I think this one is set from the point of view of Captain Hook and sort of talks about how Peter whisked him away and now paints him as the villain, but apparently he's not. Although Captain Hook is still not a good guy, but Peter Pan is a really not good guy. I don't know if that's just Once Upon a Time that's ruined him for me, or the fact that we're pretty sure he's actually ferrying like dead children around. Who knows? Next up we have The Gravity of Us by Phil Stamper. This is a contemporary novel, and I would have enjoyed this novel a lot more if there wasn't a romance in it. So this one talked a lot about journalism and followed this family who there is a new space program, and this family's dad is chosen to be an astronaut, and so then they have to move to this town and sort of become part of this reality TV show, but the main character has his own sort of really famous news broadcasting thing. I think he's a Instagram live famous person, and it sort of all goes on from there. It was actually really enjoyable, it's just the romance itself wasn't enjoyable. Next up we have Venom by Bex Hogan. This is the sequel to Viper, and it follows on from the events of that novel. Next up we have Deep Water by Sarah Epstein. This is a thriller, an Australian young adult thriller, and it sort of follows on this little boy. His name is Henry. He has gone missing, I think it was almost a year ago, no, 3 months ago, my bad, and he disappeared in this violent storm, and so his not really sister but kind of sister is trying to find out what happened to him, and his actual brother is also sort of like unsure about what to do with life. It wasn't bad. I did figure out very quickly what had happened to the kid, but you know, you can't have everything. Next up we have a book I was sent by the author slash publisher, and that was The Drop Off by Fiona Harris and Mike McLeish. This is a adult contemporary novel. It's a lot of fun. It definitely sort of, it doesn't rely on you being an Australian, but there are a lot of Australianisms in it, and it was a really fun read. One that surprised me greatly, and I was not expecting to enjoy it anywhere near as much as I did. Next up we have The Wicker Light by Mary Watson. This is the sequel slash companion novel to The Wren Hunt. So it follows a different character. I think it follows a character's, technically it follows like a new character that enters the, does it have 2 points of view? I really can't remember, but it basically follows like an adjacent set of characters whom, some of whom we saw in The Wren Hunt, some of whom we didn't. Next up we have Cursed by Thomas Wheeler. This is the feminist retelling of the Arthurian legend. So it explores what would happen if Excalibur had chosen a queen instead of a king, and it follows Nimue, who of course ultimately becomes the Lady of the Lake, as she is tasked by her dying mother to take this sword to Merlin. Next up we have Spellhacker by M.K. England. This one is kind of weird. I think this one is where it's set in a world where magic is like currency, and so there's this group of people who run a very illegal sort of get magic fast gig, and it sort of all goes from there. It's by the author of The Disasters, which I really, really loved. I've had some friends tell me that this one is sort of different in a good way, but very different way, so I'm keen to see how I feel about this one. Next up we have The Truth About Stacey by Ian M. Martin. This is the third book in the Babysitters Club series, and I bought this one because I would really like to own all the Babysitters Club books, and I also bought this one because the Babysitters Club series came out on Netflix and it was so good. Next up we have Taking Down Evelyn Tate by Poppy Noy. So this one is about a girl named Lottie who, she's kind of a bit of an alternative girl, and she finds out that her best friend Grace is dating her mortal enemy Evelyn Tate, and it all just kind of goes on from there. Next up we have a book I can thank Emily for. Thank you very much, Emily. I promise I will bring you $6 when I next see you, and that is Babysitter's Winter Vacation. It is the Babysitters Club Super Special number 3. I've never read this one. I love the Super Specials. They're so much fun, and I think this one follows the Babysitters Club as they go to a winter lodge for a week, so should be fun. Next up we have a total impulse buy, and that was All the Stars and Teeth by Adeline Grace. This one I don't know a lot about, but I do know it has pirates in it, and it is just, I heard Rachel talk about it at my book club and she definitely made it sound good. Had a lot of mythology relating to the ocean, that sort of stuff, so like sirens, mermaids, all those sorts of things. And I think it's like a mermaid slash pirate book, and honestly I'm all here for that. And yes, I did just take the sticker off because it bugs me it was still on there. Next up we have The Extraordinaries by TJ Klune. This is a superhero novel. I don't know a lot about it. I do know that it follows this guy. He is a queer fanfiction writer who has ADHD and he writes fanfiction about these two guys who are superheroes around in the world. He ends up meeting one of them, I just don't know which one, and it all kind of goes on from there. I think he wants to be his own superhero, which is really cool. Who doesn't want to be a superhero, honestly? And then the very last book that I have for you guys for this book haul today is actually the book that made me sort of think about I should do a book haul, and that is Midnight Sun by Stephanie Meyer. This book is, I want to say, sort of like a companion novel to the Twilight series, as it is Twilight but told from the point of view of Edward. It's a chonker of a book and I don't know if I'm ready to commit to it, but it should be a lot of fun because it's, you know, a story that is familiar, it's a tale as old as time, and I am actually really excited to read it. And there you go, that was my book haul when I haven't done a book haul in over a year because apparently I just forgot they were a thing that you're supposed to do on booktube. It's all fine, everything's fine. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know in the comment section below if you've read any of these books. I've only read like a handful of them and I would really love to know. If you like this video, be sure to give it a huge thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss a thing. Stay random. Bye.